At my husband's corporate retreat in Aspen, his boss Virginia Keating cornered me by the fireplace and whispered, "He's mine now, sweetie." Has been for months. I smiled, took a sip of my wine, and said, "Keep him. I'll send the divorce papers to your office Monday." Her confident smirk vanished when I added, "Along with the file I've been building on you for the past 8 weeks." What happened next didn't just end her career, it exposed a pattern that brought down an entire executive team. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're a subscriber, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. I'm standing in the Grand Lodge of the Silverwood Resort in Aspen, Colorado, holding a glass of Cabernet and pretending to admire the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking snow-covered mountains. It's Friday evening, the first night of my husband's company's annual executive retreat, and I'm surrounded by people I've been watching very carefully for the past 2 months. My name is Elizabeth Clifford, though everyone calls me Liz. I'm 34 years old, and up until about 8 weeks ago, I thought I had a pretty solid marriage. I'm a data analyst for a healthcare consulting firm, which matters because it means I'm trained to spot patterns, identify anomalies, and document everything with precision. These skills were about to become extremely useful. My husband, Michael Clifford, is the Director of Strategic Partnerships at Apex Innovations, a tech company that develops software solutions for Fortune 500 companies. He's 37, ambitious to the point of obsession, and for the past year, he's been working under Virginia Keating, the newly appointed VP of Business Development. Virginia is 42, divorced twice, and has a reputation in the industry that I only recently started investigating properly. The retreat is an annual tradition, 3 days at an exclusive mountain resort where the executive team and their spouses gather for strategic planning, team-building activities, and what they call relationship networking. The event includes executives from 3 partnering tech companies, creating a networking opportunity that usually bored me to tears. This year, though, I was grateful for the crowd. I wasn't supposed to come this year. 2 weeks ago, Michael told me the retreat had been restructured to be executives only, no spouses invited. He seemed relieved when he delivered this news, which was interesting because last year he'd spent weeks encouraging me to attend, insisting it was important for me to network with the leadership team's partners. The change in policy seemed suspicious, but what really caught my attention was a small detail he forgot to cover. His company's event coordinator, Jessica Mulberry, sent out the final logistics email to all participants. I received it because I was still on the distribution list from last year. The email clearly stated, "Executives and partners welcome." Michael had lied. Not a small white lie, but a deliberate, calculated deception designed to keep me away from this specific event. That's when I made a decision that would change everything. I called Jessica directly, confirmed my attendance, and booked my own room at the resort under my maiden name, Elizabeth Morrison. I told Michael I had a work conference in Denver that same weekend. He seemed happy about the coincidence, even relieved that we'd both be busy. I arrived at Silverwood Resort 4 hours before Michael, checked into my room in a different wing, and spent the afternoon observing arrivals from the lobby cafe. I documented who arrived with whom, what the energy was like between couples, and most importantly, I watched for Virginia Keating. She arrived at 4:47 p.m. in a black Tesla, alone. She was wearing designer casual, an outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, and she moved through the lobby with the kind of confidence that comes from knowing you're important. I watched her check in, watched her scan the lobby as if looking for someone specific, and watched her face light up with genuine pleasure when Michael walked through the entrance at 5:15 p.m. He didn't see me. I was positioned behind a large decorative column with a clear sightline to the check-in desk. I watched them greet each other, nothing inappropriate for a public space, but the body language told a different story. The way she touched his arm lasted half a second too long. The way he leaned in when she spoke was half an inch too close. The way they smiled at each other carried an intimacy that had nothing to do with professional respect. I took 3 photographs from my position, the timestamps and metadata automatically logged by my phone. Then I went back to my room, ordered room service, and prepared for the evening's cocktail reception. That's where I am now. Standing by the fireplace, watching my husband laugh at something Virginia just said, watching her hand rest on his forearm with practiced ease, and waiting for the moment I'd been anticipating for 8 weeks. The moment when Virginia Keating would finally make a move so bold, so arrogant, that it would give me everything I needed. Virginia approaches me at 7:23 p.m. I know the exact time because I've been checking my phone periodically, making sure the recording app one activated 30 minutes ago is still running in my jacket pocket. The device is a professional-grade voice recorder I borrowed from my friend Annabelle, who works in investigative journalism. It picks up conversations within a 15-foot radius with crystal clarity. Elizabeth, isn't it? Virginia says, though we both know she remembers my name perfectly. We've met at least 4 times over the past year at various company functions. I didn't realize you'd be joining us this weekend. Her smile is professional, but there's something sharp underneath it. A challenge, maybe. Or a test to see if I'll acknowledge that Michael told me I wasn't invited. Last-minute change of plans, I say, keeping my tone light and friendly. My Denver conference got postponed, so I thought I'd surprise Michael. He works so hard, I figured he could use the support. Something flickers across her face. Annoyance? Calculation? It's gone before I can fully identify it. How thoughtful, she says, and takes a step closer. We're standing near the massive stone fireplace that dominates one wall of the lodge's main room. The fire casts flickering shadows across her face, and I notice she's positioned herself so her back is to the rest of the room. Private conversation stance. You know, Michael speaks about you often. Does he? I take a small sip of wine, maintaining eye contact. Oh yes. He's very devoted. The pause before devoted is deliberate. She's testing me, seeing if I'll react. Though I have to say, he seems different at work than I imagine he is at home. More confident. More ambitious. More alive. There it is. The first real jab. Not quite an insult, but definitely implying that whatever version of Michael exists at home with me is somehow lesser than the one she sees at the office. People do tend to have different professional and personal personas, I say calmly. It's healthy, actually. Shows good boundary management. Her smile tightens slightly. I'm not reacting the way she expected. I'm supposed to be defensive, maybe hurt, possibly jealous. Instead, I'm responding like I'm discussing organizational psychology theory. Boundaries, she repeats, as if tasting the word. Yes, boundaries are interesting, aren't they? Sometimes they're very clear. Sometimes they're more flexible than people realize. She glances across the room to where Michael is talking with 2 other executives. When she looks back at me, her expression has shifted. The professional veneer is slipping, replaced by something more predatory. Can I be honest with you, Elizabeth? Her voice drops lower, intimate and conspiratorial. Woman to woman? Of course, I say, though my pulse is accelerating. This is it. This is the moment I've been waiting for. Virginia takes a step closer, close enough that I can smell her expensive perfume, something French and sophisticated that probably costs $300 an ounce. She leans in, and her voice becomes almost a whisper. Michael's different at work than I imagine he is at home. More confident. More alive. She pauses, letting that sink in. I thought you should know, things have shifted between us. He hasn't told you yet, has he? For a moment, I don't respond. I let the silence hang between us while I take another sip of wine. I watch her face, cataloging every micro-expression. The confidence. The slight anticipation of my breakdown. The faint hint of triumph in her eyes. Then I smile. Keep him, I say simply. I'll send the divorce papers to your office Monday. Her expression freezes. This clearly wasn't the response she anticipated. Along with the file I've been building on you for the past 8 weeks, I add, my voice still calm and conversational. The photographs, the credit card receipts, the hotel bookings, the call logs showing when you contact him. All of it. Your HR department should find it very interesting reading. The confidence drains from her face like water from a broken glass. You're bluffing. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Am I? I pull out my phone, tap open a folder, and turn the screen toward her just long enough for her to see the first image, a photograph of her and Michael entering the Cosmopolitan Hotel downtown, timestamp clearly visible, 3 weeks ago, 2:47 p.m., a Tuesday when Michael had told me he was in back-to-back client meetings all afternoon. I lock the phone and slip it back into my pocket. Pattern recognition is literally what I do for a living. And you? You have a very recognizable pattern. Her face has gone ashen. What do you want? Want? I tilt my head slightly. I don't want anything from you. I'm simply informing you of what's going to happen. Monday morning, my lawyer files divorce papers. Tuesday morning, your HR department receives a comprehensive file documenting your affair with a direct report, complete with evidence showing abuse of authority and potential hostile work environment implications. What happens after that isn't my concern. You can't, she starts, but I cut her off. Can't I? Watch me. I set my wine glass down on the mantel. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, Virginia. I know I will. I walk away before she can respond, moving through the crowd with calm, measured steps. I don't look back. I make it back to my room before my hands start shaking. Not from fear or anger, from the adrenaline rush of finally executing a plan I've been building for 2 months. I lock the door, lean against it, and let out a long breath I didn't realize I was holding. My phone buzzes. 3 text messages from Michael. Where did you go? Virginia said you weren't feeling well. Should I come check on you? I stare at those messages for a long moment. The fact that Virginia already reached him, already crafted a narrative about me not feeling well, tells me she's in damage control mode. She's trying to position me as the emotional, unstable wife who couldn't handle a simple conversation. I text back, I'm fine. Just tired from the drive. Going to bed early. See you at breakfast. His response comes quickly. Okay. Love you. Those 2 words feel like they're written in a foreign language I used to know but can no longer understand. I don't respond. Instead, I open my laptop and pull up the folder labeled Project Documentation, a deliberately boring name that Michael would never think to open even if he saw it. Inside are 8 weeks of carefully gathered evidence, organized into subcategories with the same methodical precision I use for work projects. Let me back up and explain how I got here. 8 weeks ago, I woke up around 2 a.m. because I heard Michael's phone buzzing on his nightstand. He was dead asleep, he's always been a heavy sleeper. When I glanced over, I noticed the screen was still unlocked, open to a text conversation. The blue light illuminated his sleeping face. I shouldn't have looked. But I did. The conversation was with someone saved in his contacts as VK. The most recent message, sent at 1:47 a.m., read, "Can't stop thinking about this afternoon. You're incredible." Michael had come home around 11 p.m., claimed he'd been working late finishing a proposal. He'd showered immediately, said he'd been at the gym during his lunch break and felt gross, and had fallen asleep within minutes of his head hitting the pillow. I sat there in the dark, the phone's glow reflecting off my face, and felt something sharp and clarifying settle into my chest. Not panic. Not even hurt, really. Just absolute certainty that something was very wrong. I could have woken him up. Could have demanded explanations right then. But here's what I know from years of analyzing data: one anomaly doesn't establish a pattern. Confronting someone before you have comprehensive evidence just gives them time to construct better lies. So I did what I do best. I started collecting data. The next morning, I told Michael I thought we should switch to a family phone plan to save money. I'd done the research, I said. We could save almost $40 a month and get better coverage. He agreed without much thought. Money saved was always good, and he trusted me to handle our household finances. What I didn't tell him was that switching to a family plan meant I became the primary account holder with access to detailed records of every call, every text timestamp, every data usage spike. I couldn't see the content of his messages, but I could see when they were sent, how long they lasted, and what number they went to. I started building a spreadsheet. Date, time, duration, recipient. I did this every evening while Michael was in the shower or working in his home office. I created a baseline of his normal communication patterns, his boss, his colleagues, his friends, his family. Then I highlighted the anomalies. VK's number appeared 73 times in the first week alone. Text messages sent at odd hours, 11 p.m., 1 a.m., 6 a.m. Phone calls lasting 30 to 40 minutes during his commute, times when I knew he was alone in his car. Data usage spikes that suggested photo or video sharing. I researched the number. A simple reverse lookup showed it was registered to Virginia Keating. I already knew who she was, of course. I'd met her at company events. She was polished, successful, confident in that way that makes other people feel slightly inferior just by existing in her presence. Michael had mentioned her often when he first started working under her supervision 6 months ago. Virginia thinks I should take point on the Henderson account. Virginia says I have real potential for executive leadership. Virginia invited me to sit in on the strategy meeting. At the time, I'd thought it was nice that he had a supportive boss. Now those comments took on a different context. But call logs weren't enough. I needed more concrete evidence. So I did something I'm not particularly proud of, but I don't regret. I told Michael I wanted us both to install location sharing apps for safety purposes. There had been a news story about a hiker getting lost in the mountains outside the city, and I said I'd feel better knowing we could find each other in an emergency. He installed the app on my phone without hesitation. He had nothing to hide, after all. Or so he thought. The location data told a story that matched the communication records perfectly. Tuesday afternoons when he claimed to be at client sites, his phone was stationary at the Cosmopolitan Hotel for 2 to 3 hours. Thursday evenings when he said he was working late, he was at an address in the Riverside district, which I later confirmed was Virginia's condominium building. I started taking screenshots. Every anomaly, every inconsistency, every lie documented with timestamp and location. But I needed more than digital breadcrumbs. I needed visual confirmation, the kind of evidence that couldn't be explained away as a technical glitch or misunderstanding. That's when I hired Peter Ledger. I found him through Annabelle, actually. My friend Annabelle Ledger. We'd met 3 years ago at a professional networking event and bonded over our shared love of true crime podcasts and organizational systems. She'd mentioned once that her father ran a private investigation firm specializing in corporate and domestic cases. When I needed someone I could trust completely, his name was the obvious choice. I met Peter at a coffee shop in a part of town where I'd never run into anyone I knew. He was in his mid-50s, dressed in business casual, and had the kind of face that you'd forget 5 minutes after meeting him, which I imagine is an excellent quality in his line of work. I need documentation of an affair, I told him directly. My husband and his boss. I have call logs and location data that suggest a pattern, but I need photographs, video if possible, and information about whether this is his first time engaging in this behavior. Peter didn't react with surprise or judgment. He pulled out a tablet and started taking notes. How long do you think this has been going on? 4 months at least. Maybe longer. The patterns in the communication data started getting obvious around January. Do you know where they meet? I showed him my compiled data, the hotel visits, the condominium address, the restaurants they frequented. I'd organized everything into a timeline with locations marked on a map. Peter studied my documentation for several minutes. You're very thorough. Most people come to me with just a suspicion and maybe 1 or 2 incidents they've noticed. This is comprehensive. Thoroughness is kind of my thing. I can see that. He scrolled through my timeline. Given what you've already established, I can have confirmation within a week. Photographs within 2. If you want a deeper investigation into whether this is part of a larger pattern, whether your husband or his boss have a history of this behavior, that will take longer and cost more. I want the deeper investigation, I said immediately. Specifically focused on Virginia Keating. I want to know if she has a history of relationships with subordinates, if there have been complaints filed against her at previous companies, anything that suggests this is a pattern of behavior rather than an isolated incident. Peter's expression shifted slightly, a flicker of interest. You think she's done this before? I think someone who moves this confidently through an affair with a married subordinate has practice. I think someone who sends text messages at 1 a.m. without apparent concern about being discovered has done this enough times to feel secure in her approach. I want to know if I'm right. He quoted me a price that made me wince internally, but I agreed. I was using money from a savings account my grandmother had left me, funds that Michael didn't know about because they'd been deposited after we were married and I'd kept them separate. Inheritance money, technically mine alone according to our state's laws. Peter delivered his first report 3 days later. Photographs of Michael and Virginia at the Cosmopolitan Hotel, entering together at 2:34 p.m. on a Wednesday afternoon. Both dressed in business attire, maintaining professional distance in the lobby, but Peter had positioned himself in the parking garage and captured them in Michael's car 20 minutes later, Virginia leaning across the center console, Michael's hand in her hair, kissing with obvious passion. The photographs were time-stamped, geotagged, and accompanied by a written report documenting their arrival and departure times. Peter had also obtained footage from the hotel's parking garage security camera through a contact he had in their security department, completely legal, he assured me, as he'd requested footage from a public area with proper authorization. The second report came a week later and contained something more disturbing. Peter had found 2 former employees of Virginia's previous company, a software firm in Austin where she'd worked as senior director of sales before being recruited to Apex Innovations. One of the employees, a woman named Mary Burke, had filed a formal complaint with HR alleging that Virginia had engaged in an affair with Mary's husband, who worked in Virginia's department. The complaint detailed how Virginia had systematically targeted him, how she'd used her authority to create situations where they worked late together, traveled together, and eventually began a relationship that destroyed Mary's marriage. The complaint had been settled confidentially. Mary had signed an NDA in exchange for a financial settlement. Her husband had resigned from the company. Virginia had left 6 months later for her position at Apex, with glowing recommendations and no mention of the complaint in her personnel file. Peter had found a second employee, a man named Clark Burke, who hadn't filed a formal complaint but was willing to speak off the record. His story was eerily similar. Virginia had pursued his wife, who worked under her supervision. When Clark discovered the affair and confronted Virginia, she'd made his wife's work environment so hostile that she'd eventually quit. No formal complaint, no settlement, just a woman who left her job and a marriage that barely survived. I've seen this pattern before, Peter wrote in his report. Individual cases get buried under NDAs and settlements, so no single company sees the full picture. But when you track someone's career trajectory and talk to people at each organization, patterns emerge. Virginia Keating has left at least 2 destroyed marriages in her wake at her previous company. I suspect there are more. I sat in my home office reading Peter's report while Michael was at work, and I felt something crystallize in my mind. This wasn't just about my marriage anymore. This was about a person who had systematically used her position of power to manipulate and pursue subordinates, who had destroyed families, and who had never faced real consequences because corporate structures protected her while silencing her victims. I don't sleep well that night. I lie in my hotel bed watching shadows from the moonlight move across the ceiling, replaying my confrontation with Virginia over and over. Around 3 a.m., I finally drift off, only to wake at 6:30 to the sound of someone pounding on my door. Elizabeth. Open the door. We need to talk. Michael's voice. He sounds angry, which is interesting because I'm the one who should be angry. I take my time getting out of bed, pulling on a robe, running my fingers through my hair. Let him wait. Let him feel what it's like when someone doesn't respond on his preferred timeline. When I finally open the door, he pushes past me into the room without waiting for an invitation. What the hell did you say to Virginia last night? He's still in yesterday's clothes, rumpled and creased. His hair is messy. He looks like he hasn't slept at all. She's been completely freaking out. She called me at midnight saying you threatened her, that you have some kind of file on her, that you're planning to destroy her career. What is going on? I close the door calmly and lean against it, crossing my arms. I told her the truth. That I know about your affair. That I'm filing for divorce. And that I've documented everything thoroughly enough that her HR department is going to have some very serious questions about her conduct with a subordinate employee. Michael's face goes through several expressions in rapid succession: denial, panic, calculation, then landing on defensive anger. You hired someone to spy on us? That's insane, Elizabeth. That's a complete invasion of privacy. What I do in my personal life. What you do in your personal life became my business when you made vows to me, I interrupt, keeping my voice level. What Virginia does becomes her company's business when she abuses her position of authority to pursue sexual relationships with employees she supervises. Those are two separate issues, Michael. Don't confuse them. This is vindictive, he says, his voice rising. You're trying to ruin both of our careers because your feelings are hurt. This is emotional, irrational. No, what's irrational is conducting an affair with your boss and not considering the professional consequences when it inevitably comes to light. I move away from the door, sitting down in the armchair by the window. I've been nothing but rational, actually. I identified a problem, gathered data, documented patterns, and now I'm implementing a solution. That's not emotional, that's strategic. He stares at me like he's never seen me before. Who are you? This isn't like you. You're acting like some kind of. I don't know, like this is a business transaction instead of our marriage. You treated our marriage like a business transaction the moment you decided Virginia was a better investment of your time and attention, I say. I'm just following your lead. Michael runs his hands through his hair, and for the first time, I see something other than anger in his expression. Fear. Look, I made a mistake. I know that. But destroying my career, destroying Virginia's career, that's not going to fix anything. Can't we handle this like adults? Go to counseling, work through it privately? Adults face consequences for their choices, I say. And I am handling this privately, Michael. I haven't told your parents, or my family, or our friends. I haven't posted anything on social media or made any public statements. I've simply documented what happened and I'm proceeding with a divorce, which is the logical outcome when one spouse betrays the other. Virginia's career consequences aren't my doing, they're hers. She chose to have an affair with someone she supervises. That's a violation of most corporate ethics policies. Please. The word comes out strangled. Please, Elizabeth. Don't do this. I'll end it with Virginia. I'll transfer to a different department. We can fix this. I look at him and feel nothing. That's the strangest part of this entire situation, the complete absence of the feelings I expected. I'm not devastated. I'm not heartbroken. I'm just done. Michael, do you know what I realized about 2 weeks into my investigation? I don't wait for him to answer. I realized I was relieved. Relieved to have an explanation for why our marriage felt hollow. Relieved to have a concrete reason to end something that stopped working a long time ago. This isn't about revenge or hurt feelings. This is about finally acknowledging reality. So that's it? 9 years together and you're just done? 9 years together, I repeat. We dated for 2 years before getting married. So yes, 9 years total. And for probably the last 2 of those years, we've been roommates who occasionally had sex. We don't talk about anything meaningful. We don't share hobbies. We barely spend time together even when we're both home. You've been emotionally checked out of this marriage long before Virginia came into the picture. She was just the catalyst that made it impossible to ignore anymore. He opens his mouth to argue, but his phone buzzes. He glances at it, and I see Virginia's name on the screen. He looks up at me, guilt flashing across his face. You should answer that, I say. She's probably worried about what you're telling me right now. Whether you're protecting her or protecting yourself. Michael's jaw tightens. This isn't over, Elizabeth. You can't just destroy people's lives because. I'm not destroying anyone's life, I cut him off. I'm simply refusing to help you hide the consequences of your choices. There's a difference. Now get out of my room. I have breakfast plans. He stands there for another moment, clearly wanting to say more, but whatever he sees in my expression stops him. He leaves without another word, the door closing with a soft click that feels remarkably final. I sit in the armchair for several minutes after he's gone, staring at nothing in particular. Then I pick up my phone and text Peter, need to accelerate timeline on HR documentation. Can you have the complete file ready by Monday morning? His response comes within minutes, already done. Just say when and where to deliver it. I go down to breakfast at 8 a.m., deliberately choosing the main dining room where I know most of the retreat attendees will be gathering. I'm not hiding. I'm not skulking back to my room in shame. I'm here, and I'm going to act like everything is perfectly normal. The dining room is set up buffet style with an impressive spread, fresh fruit, pastries, made-to-order omelets, the kind of breakfast that reminds everyone they're at an expensive resort on the company's dime. I fill a plate and scan the room for somewhere to sit. That's when I see Annabelle Ledger, my friend who also happens to be Peter's daughter. She's here representing her marketing firm, one of Apex's vendor partners invited to the retreat for networking purposes. When she sees me, her face lights up with genuine surprise. Liz? What are you doing here? She stands up as I approach, pulling me into a quick hug. I thought you said Michael's company banned spouses this year? Turns out that was just what Michael told me, I say, sitting down across from her. The actual policy still included partners. Funny how that worked out. Annabelle's expression shifts from confusion to understanding in about 3 seconds. She's smart like that, one of the reasons we became close friends. Oh. Oh no. Liz, what happened? I give her the abbreviated version while we eat, the call logs, the investigation, the confrontation with Virginia last night. Annabelle listens without interrupting, her expression moving through shock, anger, and finally settling on something that looks like fierce protectiveness. I'm so sorry, she says when I finish. But also, I'm not sorry because you're handling this like an absolute champion. Most people would have fallen apart or made a scene. You gathered evidence and built a case. I learned from the best, I say, gesturing at her with my fork. You're the one who taught me about documentation when I was dealing with that difficult client last year. Remember? You said never confront someone without having your facts organized and your evidence bulletproof. I was talking about business negotiations, she says, but she's smiling slightly. Though I suppose the principle applies. Everything is a negotiation, I reply. Marriage, divorce, career advancement, power dynamics. The only question is whether you're negotiating from a position of strength or weakness. Annabelle takes a sip of her coffee, studying me carefully. How are you really doing? Because you're very calm, and I know you well enough to know that sometimes your calm is actually shock. I consider this for a moment, trying to assess my own emotional state with the same analytical distance I've been applying to everything else. I think I'm actually okay, I say slowly. I think I've been grieving this marriage for longer than I realized. The investigation wasn't just about catching Michael. It was about giving myself permission to acknowledge that something was fundamentally broken. Finding concrete evidence just made it easier to stop pretending. That's remarkably self-aware, Annabelle says. Also kind of heartbreaking. Maybe. But it's also freeing. I push my scrambled eggs around my plate. I don't have to wonder anymore if I'm being paranoid or overly sensitive. I don't have to keep trying to fix something that one person has already given up on. I can just move forward. What happens now? She asks. Monday, my lawyer files divorce papers. Tuesday, Virginia's HR department gets a comprehensive file documenting her affair with a subordinate, complete with evidence from her previous company showing this is a pattern. After that, I shrug. After that, whatever happens is no longer my problem. Annabelle is quiet for a moment. Then she says, you know Virginia's company has a strict ethics policy about relationships between supervisors and direct reports, right? I know because our companies use the same HR consulting firm. If she's been engaging in a relationship with Michael while being his direct supervisor, that's a terminable offense. I know, I say. Peter's report included relevant sections from Apex Innovations' employee handbook. It specifically prohibits romantic or sexual relationships between employees where one has direct supervisory authority over the other. Disclosure to HR is required, and typically one party gets transferred or terminated if transfer isn't feasible. So she definitely violated policy. Spectacularly, I confirm. And if HR does their due diligence and contacts her previous employer, they'll discover this isn't her first policy violation. Which means she likely lied on her employment application when she claimed she'd never been subject to disciplinary action. Annabelle leans back in her chair, shaking her head slowly. You've thought of everything. Not everything, I admit. I didn't think about how it would feel to sit here eating breakfast while my husband is probably in his room with his mistress trying to figure out damage control. That part is surreal. Do you want to leave? We could get out of here, drive back to the city, spend the day doing something that doesn't involve being at a corporate retreat where everyone will probably hear about this by lunchtime. I'm about to answer when I see Michael enter the dining room. He's changed clothes, showered and dressed in fresh casual wear that probably cost more than my entire outfit. He scans the room, spots me, and his expression hardens. Then Virginia walks in behind him, and I watch them exchange a quick glance that communicates volumes. They're coordinating. They've spent the morning discussing strategy, deciding how to handle this situation, probably convincing themselves that I'm the unreasonable one and they're the victims of my vindictiveness. No, I tell Annabelle, keeping my eyes on Michael and Virginia as they move toward the buffet. I'm not leaving. I paid for this room, I'm registered for the weekend sessions, and I'm not going to hide like I'm the one who did something wrong. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them worry about who I'm talking to and what I'm saying. Let them wonder when the other shoe is going to drop. Annabelle follows my gaze and sees them together. Okay, she says. Then I'm staying too. Moral support. Plus, I genuinely want to see how this plays out. The rest of Saturday passes in a strange sort of suspended animation. I attend the morning strategy session, a presentation about Q4 objectives and market expansion that I barely pay attention to. I sit 3 rows behind Michael and Virginia, watching the back of their heads, observing how carefully they maintain physical distance from each other now that I'm present. During the lunch break, something interesting happens. Bryce Keating, no relation to Virginia, despite sharing a surname, approaches me near the resort's conference room. Bryce is Apex Innovations' chief operating officer, technically Virginia's direct supervisor, and one of the few executives I've actually enjoyed talking with at company events. He's in his late 50s, straightforward and no-nonsense, the kind of leader who built his career on competence rather than politics. Elizabeth, do you have a minute? His tone is friendly but his expression is serious. Of course. He gestures toward a small alcove off the main hallway, away from the crowd of people heading toward lunch. When we're relatively private, he says, I heard something concerning this morning, and I wanted to address it directly with you before rumors get out of control. I keep my expression neutral. What did you hear? That you had a confrontation with Virginia Keating last night. That there were some accusations made. He pauses, watching my reaction carefully. I want you to know that if you have legitimate concerns about inappropriate workplace behavior, there are proper channels for reporting that. You don't have to handle it through informal confrontations. This is interesting. Virginia must have gone to Bryce herself, trying to get ahead of the situation by framing me as the aggressor making wild accusations. I appreciate that, Bryce, I say carefully. And you're right, there are proper channels. I'm glad to hear that, he says, relaxing slightly. Which is why my attorney will be submitting a formal complaint to your HR department Tuesday morning, I continue. Complete with comprehensive documentation. His eyebrows rise slightly. Documentation of what, specifically? An ongoing sexual relationship between Virginia Keating and Michael Clifford, initiated and maintained while Ms. Keating held direct supervisory authority over my husband. I keep my tone professional, like I'm discussing a project timeline rather than an affair. The documentation includes photographs, hotel records, communication logs spanning 4 months, and witness statements. Bryce is quiet for a long moment. That's a serious allegation. It's a serious situation, I reply. I'm also informed that similar complaints were filed against Ms. Keating at her previous employer, complaints that were settled confidentially. I believe your HR department will want to investigate whether she disclosed those complaints during her hiring process. I see. Bryce's expression has shifted from concern to deeply troubled. Elizabeth, I need to ask, are you certain about this? Because once a formal complaint is filed, it triggers an investigation process that can't be easily reversed. I'm certain, I say. I've spent 8 weeks verifying every detail. I wouldn't be moving forward if I wasn't absolutely confident in my evidence. He nods slowly. Then I appreciate you handling this through proper channels rather than creating a public scene. That shows considerable restraint given the circumstances. I'm not interested in drama, I tell him honestly. I'm interested in accountability. Virginia Keating used her position of authority to pursue an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate. That creates liability for your company, and it's part of a documented pattern of behavior. Your HR department needs to know that, and then they need to make appropriate decisions about her continued employment. Understood. Bryce extends his hand. I'm sorry you're dealing with this, Elizabeth. For what it's worth, you've always struck me as someone with integrity. I trust that your documentation is as thorough as you say. We shake hands, and I watch him walk away toward the executive offices. I know what's happening. He's going to call HR right now, give them a heads up that a formal complaint is coming, probably start his own preliminary inquiry into Virginia's background. The dominoes are starting to fall. I skip lunch and go back to my room instead. I need to call my attorney, Lacey Morrison, and confirm everything is on track for Monday morning's filing. Lacey answers on the second ring. Liz, how's the retreat? Complicated, I say. But productive. I confronted Virginia last night and told her what's coming. She's now in damage control mode, which means she went to her boss this morning to try to frame me as making false accusations. Did it work? No. I just spoke with her supervisor. He's taking it seriously, asked me to file through proper channels, which is exactly what we're doing. I think Virginia miscalculated. She thought her position and reputation would protect her, but Bryce Keating isn't interested in protecting anyone who creates legal liability for the company. Good, Lacey says. That works in our favor. The divorce papers are ready to file Monday morning. I've also prepared the formal complaint package for Apex Innovations' HR department. It's comprehensive, includes everything Peter documented plus my legal analysis of policy violations and potential company liability. Are you still comfortable with me sending that Tuesday? Absolutely. One thing I want to prepare you for, Lacey continues. Once HR receives this complaint, they're legally obligated to investigate. That means interviewing Michael, interviewing Virginia, probably interviewing other employees who might have witnessed their relationship. It's going to become known throughout the company very quickly. I understand. Michael's career is going to take a hit, she says carefully. Even though Virginia was the one with supervisory authority, he participated in violating company policy. At minimum, he'll probably face formal discipline. At maximum, he could be terminated. That's a consequence of his choices, I say. Not my responsibility. I know. I just want to make sure you're prepared for him to claim you're destroying his life, that you're being vindictive, all the usual deflection tactics. He already tried that this morning, I tell her. It didn't work. I'm done being responsible for managing his emotions or protecting him from the results of his own decisions. Monday morning, I wake up in my own apartment, a one-bedroom place I signed a lease on Sunday afternoon, using money from my grandmother's inheritance. It's smaller than the house Michael and I shared, but it's mine. Completely mine. No shared memories, no furniture we picked out together, no wedding photos on the walls. I make coffee in a kitchen that contains only my things, and I feel something unfamiliar, peace. My phone rings at 9:47 a.m. Lacey. Divorce papers are filed, she says without preamble. Michael will be served at his office this afternoon. The HR complaint package was delivered to Apex Innovation at 9 a.m. via courier, marked confidential and addressed directly to Jennifer Burke, their Chief Human Resources Officer. They've signed for receipt. Thank you. Now we wait, Lacey says. HR investigations typically take 2 to 4 weeks depending on complexity. Given that you've provided them with substantial documentation, I expect they'll move faster. They'll want to contain this before it becomes a larger problem. She's right. By Wednesday morning, I get a call from an unknown number. Ms. Morrison? This is Jennifer Burke from Apex Innovation's Human Resources Department. I'm calling regarding the complaint you filed concerning Virginia Keating and Michael Clifford. I want to assure you we're taking this matter very seriously. We've initiated a formal investigation and I wanted to reach out to you directly to discuss the documentation you provided. I put her on speaker and opened my laptop to the detailed notes I prepared for exactly this conversation. I'm happy to discuss anything you need clarified. Your documentation is extremely thorough, Jennifer says, and I can hear the surprise in her voice. Most complaints we receive are more anecdotal. You've provided time-stamped photographs, hotel records cross-referenced with credit card statements, communication logs, location data, and witness statements from Ms. Keating's previous employer. This is investigator-level documentation. I hired a private investigator, I confirm. Peter Ledger. His contact information is in the file if you need to verify anything with him directly. We may do that, she says. I also want to inform you that we've contacted Ms. Keating's previous employer per our standard background verification process. They've confirmed that a complaint was filed against her involving an inappropriate relationship with a subordinate, which was settled confidentially. This information was not disclosed during her hiring process. So she lied on her employment application. That's what we're determining, Jennifer says carefully. Ms. Keating claims she wasn't required to disclose the complaint because it was sealed under an NDA. We're reviewing the specific language of our background check questions to establish whether she had a legal obligation to disclose. Either way, the pattern is clear, I say. She's done this before. She's doing it now. If you allow her to remain in her position, she'll do it again at your company or the next one. I understand your perspective, Jennifer says. And I want you to know we're treating this with the seriousness it deserves. Both Ms. Keating and Mr. Clifford have been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. That surprises me. Both of them? Company policy requires it when we're investigating potential ethics violations of this nature. They're not terminated, they're still being paid, but they're not permitted in the office or to communicate with other employees until we complete our review. After I hang up with Jennifer, I sit with this information for several minutes. Administrative leave. Michael's going to be furious, convinced I've destroyed his career. Virginia's going to be scrambling, probably calling lawyers, definitely trying to control the narrative before it spreads beyond HR. My phone buzzes. A text from Michael, "Are you happy now? I've been put on leave. They're investigating me like I'm some kind of criminal. This is exactly what you wanted, isn't it? To destroy my career because your feelings were hurt." I read the message twice, then delete it without responding. He's blocked now. Lacey advised me to cut off all direct communication and funnel everything through attorneys. But the next message comes from a number I don't recognize. This is Virginia. "We need to talk. What you're doing is destroying innocent people's careers over a personal vendetta. I'm willing to resign quietly if you'll withdraw your complaint and stop this investigation. Please call me." I screenshot the message and forward it to Lacey with a note, "Virginia trying to negotiate. Advice?" Lacey responds within minutes, "Do not respond. Do not engage." She's panicking because she knows the investigation will expose her pattern. Document everything she sends but don't reply. If she continues harassing you, we can pursue a restraining order. The investigation takes 3 weeks, not 4. I know it's progressing because Annabelle texts me periodic updates. She has friends who work at Apex and the rumors are spreading through the company like wildfire. Michael's been interviewed 3 times by HR, She texts on week 2. Virginia twice. They've also interviewed at least 6 other employees asking about their relationship, whether anyone witnessed inappropriate behavior, whether Michael received preferential treatment. What are people saying? I text back. Mostly that they're shocked but also not shocked. Apparently, people noticed Virginia showing favoritism toward Michael but assumed it was just mentor-mentee stuff. A few people mentioned feeling uncomfortable about how much time they spent together, but no one said anything because Virginia's intimidating and Michael's charming. Week 3 brings the resolution. Another call from Jennifer Burke. Ms. Morrison, I wanted to inform you that we've concluded our investigation. Virginia Keating's employment with Apex Innovation has been terminated effective immediately. The termination is based on violations of our ethics policy regarding relationships with subordinates, failure to disclose relevant information during the hiring process, and conduct unbecoming of an executive leader. I exhale slowly. And Michael? Mr. Clifford has been given a formal written warning and will be placed on a performance improvement plan. He'll be transferred to a different department, reporting to a different supervisor. If he completes the improvement plan successfully and demonstrates adherence to company policies, he can remain employed. However, any future policy violations will result in immediate termination. So he keeps his job. I can't quite keep the edge out of my voice. He participated in violating policy, but he wasn't the person in the position of authority, Jennifer explains. Our legal counsel advised that terminating both employees could expose the company to wrongful termination claims. We're holding Ms. Keating to a higher standard because of her leadership position and her documented pattern of this behavior. I understand, I say, though I don't entirely agree. Virginia's termination becomes public knowledge within hours. Not because the company announces it, they're far too careful for that, but because Virginia herself sends a company-wide email before her access is revoked. I don't work for Apex, but Annabelle forwards it to me within minutes of it being sent. The subject line reads, "My departure from Apex Innovation." The message itself is a masterclass in manipulation. Dear colleagues, after much consideration, I have decided to step down from my position as VP of Business Development to focus on personal matters requiring my immediate attention. This decision was not made lightly, but I believe it is the right choice for both myself and the company at this time. I want to address rumors that may be circulating. Recently, a complaint was filed against me by the spouse of a colleague, alleging inappropriate conduct. I want to be clear. These allegations are false and motivated by personal vindictiveness rather than factual circumstances. However, I have chosen not to fight these accusations through a prolonged investigation process that would be disruptive to the important work you all are doing. I have dedicated my career to empowering others, particularly women in leadership positions. It is deeply painful to be targeted by another woman using false accusations to damage my reputation. But I will not allow this situation to distract from the mission and values we have all worked so hard to build. I wish you all continued success and hope you will remember me for my contributions rather than for these unfortunate false allegations. With gratitude, Virginia Keating. I read the email 3 times, feeling my anger build with each pass. She's positioning herself as the victim. She's calling my documented evidence false allegations. She's using gender politics to make it seem like I'm the one betraying women in the workplace. This is unbelievable, I text Annabelle. She's lying to the entire company. Everyone can see through it, Annabelle responds. The people I've talked to are like, if it was false, why did she resign instead of fighting it? The email is making her look guiltier, not innocent. She's right, but it still infuriates me. Virginia gets to craft her exit narrative, gets to poison the well on her way out the door, gets to protect her reputation even as she's being terminated. An hour later, I receive an email directly from Virginia. My personal email address, which she must have gotten from company records before her access was revoked. Elizabeth. I hope you're satisfied with what you've accomplished. You've destroyed my career, my reputation, and my future in this industry based on your jealous interpretation of a professional relationship. Michael and I connected on an intellectual and emotional level that you clearly couldn't provide. Instead of looking inward at your own failings as a wife, you chose to lash out and destroy 2 people's lives. I built my career over 20 years of hard work, sacrifice, and dedication. You tore it down in 3 weeks because you couldn't accept that your husband found someone better. Someone more ambitious, more sophisticated, more aligned with his professional goals. Your documentation means nothing. Those photographs, those hotel receipts, they prove nothing except that 2 colleagues spent time together. The only thing inappropriate here is your invasion of privacy and your vindictive campaign to punish me for being successful in ways you never could be. I will rebuild. I always do. But you will have to live with the knowledge that you destroyed a woman's career not because she did anything wrong, but because you were weak, insecure, and couldn't hold on to your own husband. Enjoy your victory. I hope it keeps you warm at night in your empty bed. Virginia. I read this email once. Then I forward it to Lacey with the subject line, evidence of continued harassment. Then I compose a reply. Short, direct, final. Virginia. Your termination was the result of your choices, not mine. You chose to pursue a sexual relationship with a subordinate employee in violation of company policy. You chose not to disclose previous complaints during your hiring process. You chose to send me an email that constitutes workplace harassment even after your termination. I documented facts. HR investigated those facts. Your employer made decisions based on their findings and their liability concerns. Those are consequences of your behavior, not my vindictiveness. I won't be responding to any further communication from you. Any additional contact will be documented and, if necessary, addressed through legal channels. Elizabeth Morrison. I use my maiden name deliberately. I'm not Michael's wife anymore, not emotionally, and soon not legally. I'm myself, independent and separate from the marriage that defined me for 9 years. I hit send before I can second-guess the decision to respond at all. Then I block Virginia's email address. Michael's attempt at a final confrontation comes 2 days later. He shows up at my new apartment at 8 p.m. on a Thursday. I see him through the peephole. He's holding a bottle of wine, the expensive kind we used to drink on anniversaries, and he's wearing the shirt I bought him for his birthday last year. I don't open the door. Elizabeth, I know you're in there, he calls through the door. Your car is in the parking lot. Please, just talk to me for 10 minutes. That's all I'm asking. We have nothing to discuss, I say through the closed door. All communication goes through our lawyers. You know that. I'm not here to fight, he says. I'm here to apologize. Really apologize, not the defensive stuff I said at the retreat. I've had time to think about everything, about what I did, about how I hurt you. Please let me say what I need to say. Against my better judgment, I open the door but don't invite him in. I stand in the doorway, arms crossed, keeping the physical barrier between us. You have 10 minutes, I say. Michael sets the wine bottle down on the floor, a gesture that would have meant something once, this acknowledgement that he's not here to celebrate or seduce, just to talk. Now it just feels manipulative. I was wrong, he starts. About everything. About Virginia, about lying to you, about not appreciating what we had. I got caught up in the excitement of the affair, the validation of having someone important interested in me. I convinced myself it meant something when really it was just. He trails off, searching for words. It was just me being selfish and stupid. Is this the apology? I ask. He flinches. I'm sorry. I'm genuinely, deeply sorry for betraying you, for lying to you, for destroying our marriage. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. Yes, I did, I agree. Is that all? I want another chance, he says, and there it is, the real reason for this visit. I know I don't deserve it. I know I destroyed your trust. But we had 9 years together, Elizabeth. That has to count for something. We can go to counseling, I can transfer to a different company if you want, we can move to a different city and start fresh. Please don't throw away everything we built over one mistake. I look at Michael standing in my doorway, and I feel nothing but exhausted pity. One mistake, I repeat. Michael, it wasn't one mistake. It was hundreds of individual choices made over 4 months. Every time you lied about where you were. Every time you deleted a text message. Every time you saw Virginia's name on your phone and felt that spike of excitement. Every hotel room, every secret meeting, every moment you chose her over our marriage. Those weren't mistakes, those were deliberate decisions. I know, but... No, I cut him off. There's no but. You made your choices, and now you're experiencing the consequences. You get to keep your job, which is more than you deserve given that you violated company policy. You get to rebuild your professional reputation if you work hard enough. What you don't get is me. You don't get to come here with wine and apologies and expect me to fix what you broke. So that's it? His voice rises with frustration. You're just done. After everything? I was done the moment I saw that text conversation at 2 a.m. 8 weeks ago, I tell him. Everything since then has just been me accepting reality and taking action based on that acceptance. This isn't sudden, Michael. This has been a long time coming, and you were just too self-absorbed to notice. What text conversation? He stops mid-sentence, his face going pale. You've been planning this for 8 weeks? I've been documenting your affair for 8 weeks, I correct. I've been grieving this marriage for longer than that. Probably a year, maybe more. I just didn't have permission to acknowledge it until I had proof that my instincts were right. He stares at me like I'm a stranger. Who are you? The Elizabeth I married wouldn't have hired investigators and filed HR complaints and destroyed people's careers. She would have fought for us. The Elizabeth you married grew up, I say. She learned that fighting for something only works when both people are actually in the ring. You checked out a long time ago, Michael. I just finally accepted it. I close the door before he can respond. I hear him stand there for another minute, maybe hoping I'll change my mind, maybe trying to think of some other argument that will work. Eventually, his footsteps retreat down the hallway. The divorce is finalized 6 months later on a Tuesday morning in October. The proceedings are straightforward, no children, assets divided cleanly, no alimony requested or granted. Michael's lawyer tries to argue that my hiring of a private investigator constitutes some kind of breach of marital privacy, but Lacey shuts that down quickly with case law demonstrating that documentation of infidelity is perfectly legal and reasonable. When the judge signs the final decree, I feel lighter than I have in years. 3 weeks after the divorce is finalized, I receive an unexpected email from Mary Burke, one of the women from Virginia's previous company, the one whose husband Virginia had pursued. Dear Elizabeth, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. Peter Ledger gave me your contact information when he interviewed me for your case. I wanted to thank you for what you did. When Virginia destroyed my marriage 5 years ago, I signed an NDA and took a settlement because I was scared and exhausted and just wanted it to be over. I convinced myself that staying silent was the practical choice, that fighting would only make things worse. But watching her move to a new company and presumably start the same pattern with new victims haunted me. When Peter contacted me and explained that you were building a case against her, that you were refusing to stay silent, I felt something shift. Hope, maybe. Or relief that someone was finally willing to hold her accountable. I heard through professional networks that Virginia was terminated from Apex Innovation. I heard about the HR investigation and the documented evidence you provided. And I wanted you to know that your refusal to accept her behavior quietly has inspired me to reconsider my own silence. I've contacted a lawyer about potentially breaking my NDA on the grounds that Virginia's pattern of behavior represents an ongoing threat to others. I'm not sure if I'll succeed, but I'm going to try. And if I do, I want to make sure other women at her previous company know they can speak up too. Thank you for having the courage I didn't have 5 years ago. Mary. I read her email 3 times, feeling something warm and unexpected bloom in my chest. This is bigger than my marriage. Bigger than Virginia's terminated position. This is about breaking patterns of silence that protect predatory behavior. I write back immediately, Mary, I would be honored to support you in any way I can. If you need documentation from my case to support your legal argument for breaking your NDA, I'm happy to provide it. And if you want to connect with others who have experienced similar situations, I know at least 2 other women who would welcome the connection. We could create a support network, not just for processing what happened to us, but for advocating for better policies and accountability in professional environments. Let me know if you're interested. Her response comes the next day, yes. Absolutely yes. Over the next 3 months, I connect Mary with 2 other women I found during my investigation, both former employees of Virginia's who had experienced similar situations but hadn't filed formal complaints. We start meeting monthly, video calls at first, then in person when schedules allow. Clark Burke's wife, Sarah, joins our group. So does a woman named Lacey from Virginia's first company, someone Mary knew but who had never spoken publicly about her experience. Our group grows to 6, then 8, then 12 women who have either directly experienced or been affected by Virginia's pattern of behavior across 3 different companies spanning a decade. We call ourselves the Accountability Project. We're not a formal organization, just a network of women supporting each other and sharing information about workplace patterns that hurt people. We start documenting best practices for reporting misconduct, resources for people considering divorce after infidelity, and referrals to investigators and attorneys who understand these situations. Annabelle joins as an ally member, someone who hasn't experienced this specific situation but wants to support the work. She uses her marketing expertise to help us create a simple website where women can access resources anonymously. 6 months after our first meeting, Mary successfully challenges her NDA in court. The judge rules that non-disclosure agreements cannot be used to conceal patterns of predatory behavior that represent ongoing threats. Her case sets a precedent that makes it easier for others to speak up. 2 years have passed since that email from Mary. 2 years of building something meaningful from the wreckage of that corporate retreat weekend. 2 years of healing, growing, and helping others do the same. It's a Wednesday evening in late spring, and I'm sitting on the balcony of my apartment, the same 1-bedroom I moved into after leaving Michael, though I've made it feel more permanent now. There are plants on the balcony, actual thriving plants that I've managed not to kill. There's art on the walls I chose myself. There's a comfortable reading chair by the window where I spend weekend mornings with coffee and whatever book I'm currently working through. My life is smaller than it used to be in some ways. Quieter. More intentional. And infinitely better. I've been promoted twice at my healthcare consulting firm. I'm now Senior Director of Analytics, leading a team of 12 people. I'm good at my job, I always was, but now I have energy to invest in it because I'm not spending emotional resources trying to revive a dying marriage. The Accountability Project has grown beyond anything I imagined. We now have formal 501(c)(3) nonprofit status. We've helped 43 women document workplace misconduct, connected them with attorneys who understand these cases, and provided support networks as they navigate the aftermath of betrayal and the complexity of choosing to speak up. Mary Burke is our executive director now. She left her job in Austin and moved here last year, ready for a fresh start and a new mission. Sarah Burke manages our volunteer coordinators. Lacey handles our legal resource network. Annabelle runs our communications and outreach. I serve on the board but try to stay more behind the scenes. I've told my story enough times now, to lawyers, to journalists who cover workplace misconduct, to women who reach out asking how I found the courage to document everything. I don't need to be the public face of this work. I just need to know it's happening, that silence is being broken, that patterns are being interrupted. Virginia's career never recovered, as far as I can tell. I occasionally search her name online, not out of vindictiveness, but from a practical need to know if she's resurfaced somewhere. She hasn't. She disappeared from professional networks, deleted her LinkedIn profile, and dropped out of the industry circles where she once wielded considerable influence. I like to think she's rebuilding her life somewhere, learning from her mistakes, becoming a better person. But I don't actually believe that. People who spend years developing predatory patterns rarely transform through consequences alone. More likely, she's somewhere else, being more careful, covering her tracks better, finding new ways to pursue the same behavior without getting caught. But if she tries it at a company where someone knows about the Accountability Project, she'll find it much harder to silence her victims. We've created networks, resources, and most importantly, examples of women who spoke up and survived. That changes the calculation for everyone. Michael reached out once, about 8 months ago. A LinkedIn message asking if we could talk professionally about collaboration between our companies. I deleted it without responding. There is no professional relationship possible between us. There is no friendship possible. There's just the clean separation of two people who used to share a life and now share nothing but a legal history. I heard from Annabelle that he's dating someone new, a woman from his current department, someone not in his reporting chain this time. I felt nothing when she told me. Not jealousy, not vindication, not even curiosity. Just a distant acknowledgement that he's continuing his life while I continue mine. My sister called last month. We haven't spoken much since the divorce, our relationship strained by things that had nothing to do with Michael and everything to do with patterns we'd been avoiding for years. But she called to tell me she's going to therapy, working through her own relationship patterns, learning to stop comparing her life to mine. I was wrong, she said during that call. About telling you to stay, if I had. About any judgment I might have had. I was projecting my own regrets onto your situation, and that wasn't fair to you. I know, I said. I forgave you for that months ago. I'm not sure I've forgiven myself, she admitted. You were in crisis and I could have been more supportive. That's what therapy is for, I told her gently. To work through those things. I'm glad you're doing the work. We're rebuilding our relationship slowly, carefully, with the kind of honesty we probably should have been practicing all along. My mother would have been proud of how this turned out, I think. She died 6 years ago, before any of this happened, but I remember conversations we had about her own marriage, the compromises she made, the things she tolerated, the version of herself she lost trying to maintain a relationship that was fundamentally unequal. Don't make my mistakes, she told me once, near the end. Don't stay somewhere you're not valued just because leaving feels harder than enduring. I think about that advice often now. About how many women receive that same wisdom from their mothers, their friends, their therapists, and how difficult it remains to actually follow it. Because leaving requires resources, financial stability, emotional strength, support networks, documentation, legal knowledge, and most crucially, the belief that you deserve better than what you're receiving. That's what the Accountability Project really does. We don't just provide resources for documenting misconduct or navigating divorce. We provide evidence that other women have walked this path and survived. We provide examples of what's possible when you refuse to stay silent. We provide permission to value yourself enough to demand accountability. Tonight, sitting on my balcony with the city lights stretching out below me, I think about that moment at the corporate retreat 2 years ago. Virginia whispering, Michael's different at work than I imagine he is at home. More confident. More alive. Things have shifted between us. The confidence in her voice. The assumption that I would crumble or cry or make a scene that would let her position me as the hysterical, jealous wife. She thought that statement was her victory announcement. The moment she claimed territory and expected me to surrender. Instead, it was the moment I found absolute clarity. The moment when all my suspicions crystallized into certainty, when all my documentation became purposeful action, when all my grief transformed into strategy. She handed me exactly what I needed, irrefutable confirmation of her arrogance, her pattern, her willingness to flaunt behavior that violated every professional and personal boundary. And I used it to dismantle not just her career, but the structures that had protected her for years. People ask me sometimes if I regret how I handled things. If I wish I'd handled it more privately, more quietly, with less dramatic consequences for Virginia's career. The answer is no. Because my silence would have protected her ability to hurt the next person, and the person after that, and the person after that. My silence would have preserved the pattern that had already destroyed multiple marriages and damaged multiple lives. Speaking up, documenting everything, refusing to accept confidential settlements or private resolutions, that was the only ethical choice available to me once I understood the full scope of what Virginia had been doing. I didn't destroy her career. She destroyed it through years of predatory behavior that finally caught up with her when someone refused to stay silent. My phone buzzes with a text from Mary, new intake call tomorrow. Woman whose husband's boss has been pursuing him for 6 months. She's been documenting everything and wants to know her options. Sounds familiar. I text back, I'll be on the call. Send me her file tonight so I can review. This is the work now. This is what that terrible moment at the corporate retreat transformed into, not just my personal freedom, but a network of support for other women facing similar situations. Not just my divorce and Virginia's termination, but a growing movement challenging the structures that protect predatory behavior in professional environments. I finish my coffee and watch the sun set over the city. My city now. My life now. My choices now. And somewhere out there, Virginia Keating is living with the consequences of hers. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.